Okay, so welcome. I'm Dr. Vijay. If you don't know who I am, I'm one of the GPs in North West London ICB. It's one of the GP IT leads, but I also have a London role involved in digital transformation in primary care. And I'm here today to walk you through the Register with a GP Surgery service. And throughout this presentation, throughout the slides will be shared. So please don't worry about anything that you need to jot down. And you'll see QR codes throughout. So, for example, right now, if you ever wanted more information about the service, that QR code on the top right takes you to the main web page where you can see everything about it. But if you want to test this product, you can use this QR code here to see what it's like to be a test patient using it. And on the left-hand side, that is your first glimpse of the product. So we're talking about an online form which patients complete to register with practices, and this is a national product. So let's kick off with maybe a gentle start. When we think about how IT is done in the NHS, at scale, when governments try to create things, sometimes we can have different views on it.
He was working on his laptop late one night when his eyes beheld a ghoulish sight. He could not log in despite several tries, and then suddenly, to no one's surprise,
he did the mash.
He did the healthcare mash.
The healthcare mash.
It was a keyboard smash.
He did the mash.
The website would crash.
He did the mash.
And he did the healthcare mash. Could design such a site, so flawed and so sloppy. The code is so ancient, perhaps it was Hammurabi. He tried to apply, but the site would suspend. I've seen a eunuch with a more functional front end.
He did the mash.
He did the healthcare mash.
The healthcare mash.
It was a keyboard smash.
He did the mash.
He tried to clear his cache.
He did the mash.
Then did the healthcare mash. Hundreds of millions of dollars were spent for a website that has trouble loading. How could the government's web designers create a site with such awful coding?
They did the mash.
Oh, they did the healthcare
The
mash.
healthcare mash.
It was a keyboard
They did
smash.
the mash.
They took all of our cash
They did the mash.
and did the healthcare mash. 3 years really isn't that long to build a website, especially one that has to do one thing. I'm just saying. I met Joe Biden once. Somebody that looked like Joe Biden.
Don't worry, I won't throw too many things like that to you today. But no, we'll pick up some of those concepts here. But first of all, please, I'm going to show you this product, and I'm going to hope you're going to see it's nothing like any of the fears you might have from that video. And I'm going to give you a big challenge here. And there's no violence involved in my challenge. Well, no violence yet. I'm going to challenge you that you could go live by the end of this webinar. That it is that simple, that quick to set yourself up as a practice with what I'm showing you. It's that, it is a challenge. And, like I said, QR codes throughout. So Profile Manager is a key way to go live. You can see a demo of the whole product on the NHS app. And, you may think that that challenge is unrealistic, but when I've done these webinars before, exactly that has happened. Some practices have hit the chat by the end of the session, say they're live. Or maybe it's just to get rid of me, that they don't want to hear me ever again. Whatever the reason, they've gone live. So what are we going to talk through? How we're going to structure this, hopefully about 45 minutes. So how does it work? Can we really actually understand the product? Why should we use it? Let's debate. Should we use it? Should we not use it? And then if we do agree that we want to use it, how do we set it up? So I'll go through every little practical step if you want to get this perfect. And then I'll close with like an opportunity for some questions. I'm really going to hope that I answer most of the questions all the way through, but you're welcome to post them in the chat as well as we go through. And I'll try to pick them up as I can. So how does it work? What's underneath the hood? Well, what is underneath the hood of this service? And if we just look firstly around us, government websites, I don't know if you've tried renewing your passport online. Oh, God, isn't it so much easier than it used to be? You upload your photographs, it tells you straight away if the photograph's going to work or not, be accepted. None of that hassle in the past. If you've got old cars like myself, you're probably used to auto renewing your road tax online, so much better. So you can see that there's a movement that website is more about doing things, not just showing you information. And there's a design principle, sort of the layout, maybe very simple but clear with sort of common themes to the buttons. And the NHS is no different. If you look at the NHS Find a GP page, it uses the same sort of design language. And this is also to meet sort of accessibility standards. If you don't know much about that, it is a bit technical, but there's a QR code that explains it a bit more. But the NHS is also about doing things online, not just reading about things online. So where did the Register GP Surgery Service come into all of this? So as an overview, first of all, it's free. It is totally free. When I say free, it's part of NHS ED products. You're not going to have to find money in the future where something's given to you free and then you're told, well, now you have to pay for it. So it's a long-term free thing. Then the second thing is that patients access it through different ways. Find a GP page now will link in, the NHS links in, and actually you can then link your practice website, you can promote it. So I'll show you exactly how that works later on. And when it was developed, genuinely, one of the huge aims was to reduce admin workload for practices. How does it reduce workload? Well, we'll see that as well. It manages catchment area issues. It helps match that patient. So 92% patients who come through the system are matched. That means you've got fewer sort of exceptions, rejections when you process them. But, I may be a digital lead, I may be an IT lead, but I completely get it's never all just digital. There's a paper version of this too. So you don't even have the headache of, designing and aligning it. It follows the same flow. And I'll show you that as well. If we look at some of these numbers, already 1.2 million registrations have been processed. So, like that fear about it not be new or things like this, it's been around actually for a couple of years. It's established. 95% of patients are satisfied for it, and that's genuine. I'll show you where that gets measured as well. And it's got positive GP feedback. And already about half the practices in the country are already live. So we're actually sort of, you may be thinking, well, why are we not live if you're attending today? That would be probably the debate here. Okay, so what questions are asked by the form? We're on different pages sometimes. Like it can be for as doctors or GP practices talking to patients, we can have different agendas, like me trying to talk to this bird or animal. And we've got to get a compromise. I may want as a GP to answer lots and lots of questions. The patient doesn't really know how to either answer them, or it could be overwhelming. They don't want to do it. So the questions are developed on insights from everyone: GPs, professionals in GP surgeries, digital teams, patients. But this is the magical bit. They're constantly under review, tweaked, maintained based on feedback. And when about half the country is already live in it, that's great because you get consistent, lots of feedback and improvements. And yeah, another coordinator. This is me sliding down the slide to show you that I'm going to just slide through the next series of slides really quickly, just to show you the form, but not spend too much longer in it because you can go through this at your leisure if you needed to, but just so you can get a flavour. So the first bit is it starts as a single form. It's not a child form or an adult form. It's a single form, but it's dynamic. As you enter answers, it can adjust the form. So if it realizes you're going to be a child, it will add in a child questions. Another bit of confusion I really want to resolve is there's no need for a separate GMS1 form. Now, even if we go back before this product, if your registration form captured all the questions in the GMS1 form, you didn't need to complete a GMS1 form. But think of this as now the replacement to the GMS1 form. That is how it's been sort of rolled out. And it does use the NHS login, but you don't have to use the NHS login. So if we look at this process, it starts, the person's saying are they registered themselves or someone else, and it's asking them about NHS login, but they can continue without. If they do use an NHS login, they just have a slightly quicker experience because it can pre-populate some information for them. So it asks them about name, then it asks them about date of birth, and this is what's happening in the adult registration. It then asks about NHS number, and usefully, if they don't know it, it can direct them to where to find it. So it can also save you time when patients keep asking you, what their NHS number is. Then it asks them if they've been previously registered with a UK GP, and then it leads sort of gathering that information. It checks about the current UK address if they've got one, and that obviously then helpfully manages the catchment area. And there's two options here, or two flows here. If your practice does not accept out of catchment areas, the system will detect that, and it will give them that message that their address that they're suggesting that they live at is outside your catchment area, and it asks them to go back to select a different GP. So that's if you definitely don't accept out of catchment area patients. But if your practice might accept out of catchment area patients, then they see this message, which is it mentions that their address could be outside your catchment area. that you might not accept it, but it allows them to continue, or it allows them to also decide if they want to select another GP practice. It doesn't also commit saying that you're definitely going to register them either. Okay, so then it goes on to contact details. It then asks about gender, ethnicity, if they need a language interpreter, if they want to choose or change their pharmacy. Now, I just want to clarify this. This is an optional question. You can decide to have it on and off. We'll show you how that works later. But I suggest that this is extremely useful, and probably most of us would want this on. So it involves that issue. If we don't change their nominated pharmacy and they've moved area and then we forget, and at that first consultation the GP prescribes and it goes to the wrong pharmacy, we have to then cancel it or reissue it, or the patient drives miles to collect it. So it just helps you do that at the point of registration, and it really guides them through the process. They can search on postcode, they can get a list of the pharmacies, even check their opening hours and select their chosen choice. Now we go on to sort of GMS style questions. So are they registered with the Defence Medical Services? Do they have an emergency contact? And if so, the details. Have they recently moved to the UK from another country? So again, just asking you the more details about it, if that applies to them. Where they were born, their current GP surgery, if they're registered with a current GP that they want to leave, and it just checks which one that is. Medical conditions. So this is basically where we start to get real medical, where they first of all they can say yes and can see a list of potential things that they might want to say they've got. And they've got this really useful, helpful free text thing to give more details or clarifications. Similar with allergies, again, they can say yes and give more details. And then with mental health conditions, with disabilities, then if they've got a carer, and then collecting the carer's details. And then the opposite, obviously, if they are a carer, and then what kind of carer they are. And then communication needs, if for either them, and if they've said that they've got a carer, for the carer as well. And then reasonable adjustments. You might be aware also that there is the sort of rollout of the reasonable adjustment digital flag that's due to start to hit us in primary care. This could help with that journey, that it starts to collect that information for you. And then about medications, and if you read like some of the details, it's again very helpful. Sometimes it warns them that if there are repeat medications, they might be contacted to clarify some of that, or that further steps may be needed. Then it asks about height and weight, and helpfully can switch from metric to imperial, so it avoids you having to try to convert things. Alcohol screening, smoking, and then their summary care record preferences, and obviously quite a difficult topic to sometimes explain, and it has useful links. So again, one less headache for practice to think how they communicate that. Now that was the adult flow. If they went down a child flow, that they were registering a child, it does one useful step, which is sometimes to clarify, to ensure that the parent is registering not just a child, that that they're also joining the practice and getting that flow correct. And it also then asks things about education, if any other agencies involved with the child, and things like vaccination, and then sometimes even about carers. And that's it. They've completed their form, but prior to submitting it, they get an opportunity to check their answers, change anything that they may have done incorrectly, and then they just click the green button to submit it. And then they might celebrate. I mean, I'm joking, but I'm not completely joking. I mean, if you're a busy parent and you're trying to register your whole family because you've moved, you could do that for multiple family members. So it can take a bit of time. But for each registration, they get a confirmation, they get an explanation of what's going to happen next. And it doesn't give them unrealistic expectations. It says, they should hear within a couple of weeks from the practice about, that things have been processed. And importantly, it gives them the chance to give genuine feedback at this stage, how they felt that registration form was. So whatever we may feel about it, 95% of patients are very happy with how they found that form experience. So that was a patient journey. I think you're now asking me, well, what happens at our end in the practice? Well, at the moment, you receive this via NHS mail. and you receive it from this email address here, and you get an email a bit like what you can see on the screen. And in the email, you have a PDF attachment, which is basically the form as an attachment. Within the body of the email, you've got the same information, just reproducing the body. So sometimes you may find it's quicker to cut and paste things out of the actual body of the email rather than just using a PDF, where you may end up using both. But importantly, what I'm trying to say is that at the moment, this is manual data entry, where you've got either your EMIS or System 1 open, and you're cutting and pasting it into hopefully a template. Us as an ICB in North West London, we are trying to improve that template, and I'll pick that up in more to make it even easier to manually transfer across. This will get better, and I'm going to explain that later on, but this is your starting point, and important information is flagged at the top of it. So if the patient was out of their catchment area, or if they were using NHS login, you get that right at the top. And there is actually an optional step here where you can set up your practice to automatically notify the patient once you process the registration. So it can save you even more admin steps, and I'll explain that in a few moments. So that's how your practice receives it. How does your patient find this form? Like I said, 4 different ways: practice website, NHS app, and if you gave them a paper form. So let's look at a practice website. So if your practice web page like this had some sort of page, you're going to get a unique link for your form on the system for just your practice. So you just basically put your link into your practice web page. You might have to do a quick review of whatever else you've written to think, do I take out lots of stuff that may be less relevant? In this practice, they've also put a link to the paper form as well, subtly here as well. It depends on how you want to do that, whether you think that causes confusion or not, or whether you think it's still useful. But this is how one practice has done it here. And this is an example of a poster where, helpfully it might be near a reception desk if people are sort of interested in registering and they're queuing up. Maybe they see this poster, they scan this QR code, it takes them to your form, and they do it without bothering you. I actually personally think this is really useful to display on the front door of your premises. So, if a person new to the area was exploring and you're actually shut, and they think, oh gosh, I thought I'd pop in, and they just look at it, they scan the code and start the process. Now we've got the NHS webpage, so find a GP. So when you put your postcode in and you search for a GP, you're probably used to that patients see a list of practices based on nearest to their postcode, but this is that big change. Practices that are with the national system, the patient sees this link here, register online with a GP, a big bold link. No other online registration form or system can create that link. Nothing, only the national option. And you can look at this practice here that doesn't have the link. And I'm basically suggesting that it's going to influence patients' behaviour on who they register, because, we're busy, late at night, you want to register. Do you pick the practice that has that link and you just tap it and you get on with registering? Or do you still stick to the one that's nearest? It can influence how people register. And the NHS app is the third way. So it's now fully integrated in the NHS app. It's a bit like a Find a GP experience. I've created a video here. If you scan this QR code, you can actually see a walkthrough where I'm actually just showing you how that whole form works. But increasingly, 3 out of 4 adults, so 33 million, are using the NHS app. This is growing. Surely this is going to become an increasing way that people register with GPs. And I said to you about the paper form. So if we have a look at this here, you can hopefully see that it's professional. It looks, quite well laid out. It's got a little alert here saying, still that you can do things online, but it's useful. It follows the same flow. So that's page 1, page 2. That's page 3, page 4, and that's page 5, page 6, and that's page 7, page 8. So it's like an H-page document. Okay, so I've shown you how does it work. I'm going to now move on to why should we use it. You've seen the product. Do we use it? Now, this may be you or your practice. I've shown you the product. You might feel that there's no benefits whatsoever with the service. You're quite happy with the paper forms. If that's the case, I'll just really ask you, just try it. Make sure you've tried it from just even the patient's perspective. You can do this, scan this QR code if you want to. And if I've done a bad job to explain anything, have a look at this web page. It just explains even more about the product. Just have a sense check before you make a final decision. But let's see who is using it. So across England, over 3,000 practices, so 49%, practically 50%, half of practices are live with it. If we look at London, we're slightly below that average. We're at sort of 44%, but this is where we can celebrate. In Northwest London, we're above that curve. We're at 60%. So if you're attending today, you're probably in that 39% or 38% that are not live. And you can see even like last week, 3 went live. So it's just happening organically. I would hope that after today we have a big surge. And as I said, it takes minutes. Most people go live straight away. Not going to go through that one, but here we have what are the benefits for practices. I've kind of alluded to you a bit about this. The accessibility standards. You don't have to worry about the design of it. Does it meet all the needs technically? It's based on feedback from everyone, including us practices, the 3,000 that are live. It's free to use. We manage this catchment area. It tries to reduce all that admin burden by matching the patient more, so making it easier to process. But this is another bit. It supports automation. And this may be either familiar to you or completely foreign to you, but we'll cover that a bit later on. But there are third-party products. And there's other things coming up in the future, which means you may not even have to manually enter anything into the records at all. I'm going to mention something and then say I'm not going to mention it. I compare this to Harry Potter movies when they say don't, or Harry Potter books when they say don't mention Voldemort. So the GP contract mandates that your practices, we have to use this, both the online form and the paper form by October. Now, we all as a profession or as practices, we can have lots of different views on the GP contract. And that's why I'm going to say, let's also forget the GP contract. Today, I'm really looking that you want to do this, that you really want to do it, feeling that really you have to do this. We're in June, we're not in October. And I'm kind of keen that you just actually think this product is good. And I want you to think of the contract in a slightly different way. The product is doing so well that they just thought they should roll it out faster. The initial target was that to hit 2,000 practices by December 2023. They hit that target like even months earlier, weeks earlier. So I think it just spiraled into them thinking, well, let's just get this rolled out even faster because it's working well. And like I said to you, forget the contract. What about potentially the own impact financially to ourselves as practices? I just want to clarify, I'm purely a salary GP. I'm not a partner. I don't profit share in practice. But just looking at this thought process, can it really affect, even if you don't want to go live and your neighbouring practice has, will you start to find that your neighbouring practice gets more registrations than you do? And feedback from practices. I don't know how much you know about us in Ealing, and some of you in Ealing may be on this call, but actually in Ealing, pretty much all the practices are live. I think there's only a couple, and none of us are amazingly first followers, first to everything. We're really normal. A lot of us are quite small practices. We've got very diverse populations, but you can see the feedback that the practice managers felt that it was just great, really simple. The team was good, the branding, the product. And although there's a rainbow here, I paid none of them any pots of gold for these feedback sound bites. So we're normal. And what about our patients? If we look at these comments, there's just that theme about, oh God, saving us having to go to the practice. We may not be covered in long snowy roads like this photograph, but like let's remind ourselves it's 12 minutes for the patient to complete this form online. That may sound long, but actually it often takes them a lot longer using paper forms. 1.2 million have completed these so far. What about the limitations? I want to be balanced here. Nothing is ever absolutely perfect. What is kind of not so perfect? Well, first of all, it's totally standardized. That form cannot be changed by your practice locally. You can't customize the question, add a question in, change it, drop a question. There's a couple of options about, like I said, about the pharmacy choice option that you've got, but nothing is, you've got to view it as just not customizable. But sometimes limitations may sound like limitations, but they can actually be a good thing. Do we just ask too many questions for our patients when they register? Do we ever get really high quality responses or accurate? Even if we get lots of data coming back, do we have the time to deal with it all with lots and lots of questions? Do we offer that balanced service? And even if we really felt passionate that another question should be added or changed, we have the ability to suggest changes to the national team. So we can always influence a product too. But also, don't we often get GP to GP transfer in majority of the registrations that they've already been with a GP in England? So don't we get a lot of transfer data and we don't need so much asked in the registration form? And even if we really did want to ask further questions, we could always send two-way text messages or ask them to email back things. There are workarounds, maybe not ideal, but there are options if you want to add on some local steps as a practice. The next limitation is that the patient can't upload any documentation, ID, address. They want some medical records. Nothing is uploadable in that form. And the only authentication is that NHS login. However, and I hope you see the person here, is that also potentially not such a bad limitation. We're not meant to ask for ID or proof of address. It's not required for registration. And if you're not sure, the guidance isn't that QR code there. But even if we get those documents, I hope we're aware that we're not meant to store it. We can't save it into the patient's record. And if you have any queries, check with the LMC guidance. So you can't store it. We're not experts about Photoshop and whether these are genuine documents. So we can't really check if it's actually correct. So isn't the NHS login more robust identity check than anything we can do in practice? And even if we wanted to do this, we could again supplement it, ask them to email stuff to us or use two-way messaging. So those were the limitations. Now that looks like a very busy text slide, lots of things. But this is the future of the product. Here's a roadmap that you can see in the top right QR code if you want to read more about it. But this is where it's all a bit IT. So if you're not into IT, I'm sorry. But the main point is the future. This goes directly into System 1 and EMS. And that work has already started on that. So then the workload really plummets even further, that it just comes into your workflow, a few clicks, the information's coded, it goes through. So it's just so much easier. Now, at the moment, that is not live. The work has started on it. But if you really want to get those benefits early, you can use third-party automation providers, which I'll explain in a moment, but you have to pay for that. And they can also automate and reduce your data entry. So that's the future. And let's show you that automation that I mentioned to you. So this is what we call a robotic process automation, or RPA. Think of it as a robot who's sitting in front of an EMIS terminal, clicking all the buttons, processing that registration. So this is a video that's demoing it from one of those providers. If you want to know more about how this product works with third-party automation, look at the QR code on the top right. And if you want to watch this demo again, you've got a YouTube link at the bottom. But 80% of registrations can be processed by such robotic automations. And it's very quick. It processes it within 1 minute, tapping away like that. So what happens with automation is your form actually goes to one of those third-party companies, and here are the current ones: GP Automate, HealthTech One, and soon to launch JiffJaff. You might have seen mail shots from them, and then they literally send it into your System 1 or EMS. So those are options, but they're totally options if you really want to speed up the process, but they come at a cost. Right, what if I've told you all of this, but you're still not keen to end your existing form or process? Maybe you've got some really high-tech solution and you just think this is not going to suit your practice. Well, look, first of all, I'm going to show you that you're in complete control. When you go live, or you can turn things on and off yourself through Profile Manager. And maybe, this may sound a bit confusing, maybe if you're not sure, you could start a journey by just doing it in parallel with what you're doing at the moment and seeing how you find everything and seeing, what the updates come with interoperability. So I hope your journey starts, and I really hope it starts today, and that you actually grow to love the product and think it actually saves you time. Right, so I've covered how does it work, why should we use it. We're now in the third part. How do we set it up? And I view this as Lego. It's just a few really simple Lego pieces to put together. But I know you're busy people. I've racked my brain. I've come up with 13 Lego pieces or steps to do. You're busy. You may already be bored. You may be tired. You may need to go to the loo. You may want a coffee. That's absolutely fine. If you need to dash out, do that now. Fine. You don't have to do all of these steps. You don't even have to do them in the order. We are sharing this recording. We're sharing the slides. But let's look at these 13 pieces of Lego. So the first step, and probably the most critical one, is enrolling for the service. NHS Profile Manager, you're probably familiar as that's the way you can respond to NHS website reviews or correct your opening hours if you have to do things like that. If you're not sure, if you're not set up, all the contact details are here in the top right. So you've got the email address for support, phone number, and that's a 24-hour support number. So you can even call them right now in this webinar and sort it out. But when you go into Profile Manager, you now see a sign in. After you sign in, you've got this box here saying sign up for the Register with the GP Surgery Service. So you click on that. And it just gives you a bit of blurb saying what you're doing, what to expect. I guess you're meant to read it. You click on to continue. And you'll see the list of practices. Now, I hope for most of you, that's just one practice. You might see that there's a few practices you might have worked at before and you've forgotten to get them removed. If you're one of those practice managers that are covering multiple practices, first of all, my heart goes out to you. I don't know how you're doing your job. You definitely need to go and get a coffee now. But yeah, you can do it obviously for all your practices one by one. Yeah. Right. So what does it ask you when you want to set up? First, it wants that email address. It wants to know where to send these forms. And what it does is it sends a verification code to that email address. You put that code in and it verifies you. That obviously helps that we didn't accidentally do a typo and that the forms never reached us. So it just verifies we entered it incorrectly. Ask just two questions really here. Does your surgery offer a language interpretation service for patients? Surely that's a complete yes for all of us. In North West London, we've also got silent sounds. Are you dispensing surgery? Surely that's a no for pretty much all of us. And do you want a chance for your patients to nominate a pharmacy during the registration? I'd really encourage you to think that that should be a yes, but you can choose here and then click continue. And that is it. It literally just takes seconds. That is our whole setup process. Now you can see why I'm just saying that people just go live instantly. But you can also confirm your details. I'm actually sorry, I misled you. You have to just check your details and click the green buttons. There's a few more seconds in there to collect those really complex questions that you had to answer, but you're then live. And once you've clicked that, you get a confirmation on screen that you're live, and you get a confirmation email. The most useful thing in that email is this link. This is that unique link for your practice so that your patients can access using that link to get your form. If I lose it, you can always go back to Profile Manager to find it again, but it follows that structure. It's that link there with your practice ODS code after it. The Find a GP webpage can sometimes take a couple of days to actually update with that link to show that you're live. But this all happens very quickly. What if you want to turn it off in the future? Hopefully never, but you just go back into Profile Manager, click that same button, and then you see your screen. It shows you your registered surgeries this time. And if you click on view details here, and it says here patient access, it's currently on. If you click on change, you've then got the options here. Turn off Find a GP, so you can't sit and Find a GP, or you've got a bigger turn off it on the Find a GP webpage, but also turn off the link. Even if patients have got that link, it just won't work. And then if you have ever turned it off, you can turn it back on here. So you can just toggle it on and off as it suits you. Okay, what if you're too busy? You can't find your NHS profile log in details. You can't be bothered to contact service desk. Just your workload is crazy. Well, we can make it even easier for you. Just email the registered GP support team at this email address, include just that information, and they'll go live. Or you can just use that form, which is a Microsoft Word form. I've put a QR code so you can just grab your smartphone, scan that code right now, and you'll be live. So that's even easier. Catchment area is step 2. Step 2 is there can be glitches in your catchment area. 20% of practices may have incorrectly drawn catchment area lines. Here's an example from Elam. This is a practice where you can see these two strange lines here means that it causes issues. Like sometimes the system can't detect, well, is that between the lines, that line or not? Is that postcode right? Now, the first thing is this has got nothing to do with this registration product. This is actually a legacy issue which has been maybe going on for years and years and years, and was affected by a GP webpage, and maybe your practice just never checked or never knew. But now it becomes more critical because it controls that registration, so you have more impact from it. So that's the first thing. It's got nothing to do with the product, but the product will be impacted by it. And the quickest way to test this is when you just go to find a GP webpage, maybe just type in your GP practice postcode as the patient's postcode and see how it returns your practice. If your practice is not returned at the top of the list of possible practices, that would be quite unusual and there could be an issue. This is not a perfect test. I can't say that that would tell you everything, but it's a really good screening test just to think, could you have a catchment area issue? And if you did have an issue, this explains a bit about how you then try to fix it. So there's a guide, and that's a link to just explain how to manage a catchment area. There's like a website, a hub, so you can go on this link here and you can log in to try and correct things. And some of you may know about SDCS, Strategic Data Collection Service. That was another way to sort of address this. I think most of us have no idea what on earth SDCS is, but these first two resources should be your starting point. And I just want to go back to that catchment area preferences. Whether you're shown as you don't accept out of area of registrations or you might, that is taken from your EDEC submission. And I showed you already the two different meshes that depending on what is your state. When you do your EDEC submissions, it will update your settings. But if you ever want to change it or you want to check what's going on, you can contact the NHS web page service desk, and they can change the settings as well if they need to do that for you. So that was step 2. Now we're going to get a little bit easier with the steps. Step 3, the emails are coming into your main box. Is it worth creating a registration subfolder? And sometimes useful to have an NHS mail rule. I don't know if you're using NHS rules, but they can really help manage your big main practice inbox. And here's an example of a rule that I've shown, maybe just to redirect any emails from that email address into that subfolder. So it just makes it easy that they're always in one place. You can, even if you want to be fancy, put things like a category or a label on it, but maybe that's a bit too fancy. Step 4, test it. You've got your link, try it. Use the link and see that it works, that you get something coming to your practice email address. This photo is from one of the early pilot practices, and if you want to know more about their experiences, scan that QR code. And the data entry template. So your team are probably still manually maybe entering things in from that form. So in North West Online ICB, we are updating the ordering of the flow of those the templates. So it makes it easier that the order is the same as the questionnaire. So that should help you further. NHS Notify. This is step 6, and this is optional, and this is not exactly the product, but could be helpful. You can actually benefit from automatic messaging to patients that when you actually process the registration, the patient is notified automatically, either through an NHS app message. If that can't get to the patient, maybe an email. If there's no email address that can't get to them, it will try a text message. If that patient is really digitally excluded and only has a postal address, it will send the patient a letter. So if you want to know more about it, want to activate it, first of all, there's a QR code there. But I'm going to show you, go back to Profile Manager. Yep, that same place, Profile Manager. Isn't it a great place to be? So you go back into that box, signed up with a GP surgery service, but you've already signed up. You go back into View Details. You click on that tab there, and it opens up here. I'd already shown you Patient Access. It's the one below that, Send Registration Message. And you click on Change. And it just asks you, do you want us to message your patients? And you either go yes or no. So not exactly complicated. So I'd recommend you toggle this onto on, so yes, and click continue. And that's done. That's the notification service. And at the moment, there's no charge for that. So it can be a useful thing to even help save text costs. Step 7 is switch your paper form. You may have something photocopied millions of times in the reception or have a really smart form, but we're really asking for you to now switch to that national form. Like I said to you, there is a little message on that national form, which does still ask them to sort of encourage them to register online. So even if your reception staff are handing it out occasionally, maybe some of the patients won't actually complete the paper, but do it online. And online will still give you the lowest workload process for your practice. So that paper form is now kind of abbreviated to PRF1. I think we should start to grow familiar with PRF1. think of it as it's kind of probably going to be our replacement term to GMS1. So useful to learn, and yet another abbreviation in the NHS. Where do you get the paper forms? Again, yep, back to Profile Manager. Go to sign up option, click on that. And then you've got to download the paper form now shown at the bottom. You click on that and you can download it. Now that's how they want you to find it generally, but I've actually just also showed you a link. You can you click on that link and go directly to it as well. And that link could be useful even to put into your websites if you do want to also have a paper form. But I'd also say really try to make sure you promote that main online form and not just that paper form. Otherwise, you'll just probably get less people who could have done the online form doing it. And another thing is, this is another useful resort. I don't know if you've seen some of these emails that have come out recently. Again, not really part of the Register with the GP Surgery project, but just thought it's appropriate to mention here. You can access sort of patient questionnaires, healthcare guidance in different languages, and they're dual language. Like it has English on the left and the other language on the right, so it can help your staff if they're getting things back. What does it mean? For System 1 practices in North West London ICB, I've set this all up for you in Communications as Annex. If you look at the preset messages, you can text, email, or AirMid patients links to all of those forms. So I've done this all for you. If you're an EMIS practice, unfortunately, I can't get that done for you in the EMIS world. You would have to think about setting up things like in Accurex or whatever else you want to do for that. Okay, so now we got sort of on that theme of text and messages, maybe still creating some template messages. And again, System 1 practices in North West London, I've done this for you. So you've got some of these template messages, but you're going to maybe want to tweak them. So there's one that's just that registration link. I think that's useful for a mother who wants to register their baby. So you may want to just copy my template if it's in System 1, or EMIS users just cut and paste this and just put your link in there. So it's useful for reception staff to know and to add, and people doing processing maternity birth records, may want to text that link in advance to just think to the parent, how do we start to plan how they're going to register. And then I think if you're using the NHS Notify, you don't need to tell them that they're registered with the practice, but if you're not, then this is a useful thing to just tell them to confirm it. I subtly also promote the NHS app at the same time. Then a third message would be if they're out of catchment area and you don't want to register them for whatever reason, because logistics, that could be a message that tells them that you're not processing it, but redirects them to the Find a GP page. Again, System 1 practices, that's all set up for you in the Communications Annex. Right, so 9, go to your practice website, update whatever web page you're using to tell patients how to register and put your unique link in. If you're struggling to put your unique link in, contact your website provider. They're all aware of this national product now. They should be able to help you. And just have a quick glance through your text. Is it all relevant now that you're using the national form? Okay, those promotional materials that I showed you before, I think they're really useful. You can download those sort of communication materials from like the national web pages for this product. You can see a little video. I mean, it may not be so useful on a media screen, or you may find it useful. I mean, the decision is yours. But I want to just take you through that practice poster experience. It'd be great to create your own QR code for your own link, and it takes seconds to do. If you don't know how to create QR codes, you just paste that link. So the link you've been given, or any web page, you paste it into the search bar of the Edge browser. Then you go onto any white space, you right click, and you'll see this option, create QR code. And hey presto, a QR code is created for you. You can copy it and paste it anywhere. Now, even if this webinar taught you nothing, I actually feel like this tip, if you didn't know how to do this, just stick it in any post for anything, for everything. It is just a way to communicate web pages nowadays. And the same can be done with the Chrome browser, exactly the same process, but there's one little difference. You get a lovely dinosaur. Now, you may love dinosaurs, you may love the Jurassic Park movies, or you may actually not, but the issue about the dinosaur is it's dead space in the center. So if you want to be really creative, put a practice logo in there, you can just paste it over there and the QR code will still work. So they have some learning about dinosaurs and Chrome. But now, practice auto-reply messages. I really encourage practices that in your generic email address, you have a constant 24-hour day auto-reply message. You may have something like this constructed. And I'm just suggesting that you may want to say something like, want to register with this practice, and put the link in there. So even if patients happen to find your email address and ask you how to register, your work has already been done. They're being signposted to do it by an auto-reply. And similar with email signatures, so step 12, some relevant staff may be senior admin reception leads if they're doing emails with patients. Again, it may be useful that they consider adding it into their signatures. I think signatures are useful, even if it's just for reception staff to then remember what the links are rather than finding it. Okay, we've got to the final step, and I know I'm just slightly over on time, so please bear with me, but I've shown you the product. I've shown you lots of the Lego pieces, but maybe the final most important step is your team need to know that it exists. They need to understand it. They need to test it. If they try it and they understand it works and they feel that they believe in it as a patient experience, and they're going to embrace it. And this is a genuine practice and one of the early pilot practices on our patch in Northwest London. So you may know this practice. They genuinely felt it reduced their workload by half. So that workload reduction is definitely a core aim of this product. So I've told you how does it work. I've shown you why should we use it. I've told you how to set up, and now we close in on questions. And these are the links I've shown throughout. The slides are going to be shared. This is just a recap on those key things. I'm genuinely happy to take questions. I know we've run over on time. So if anyone wants to come off mute, if there's something you want to ask, please do it now. If you want to try and email me or contact me afterwards, absolutely fine. You can contact me directly. There's also the sort of national team email address here. Can I urge you? I know that everyone's really busy. General practice is crazy. I know I joked a bit about going live in seconds, but that actually is the reality. You could go ages thinking, oh, well, I'll get around to it. I'll do it. Half the practice already live, and I'm not saying that's the right way to roll out change, but a lot of practices just go live. I've just switched it on and said, well, we'll just see how the form comes and we'll just handle it, because they felt that confidence that it is that tested. I'm not saying that is right, but it is that quick. You could go live today. But if you have any issues, have any questions, please reach out. Happy to support you in any way possible. Yes, you talked about the recording slide. I will. I think when we stop the recording, you'll get in the chat that the recording will upload. I put a YouTube link of a previous recording not that long ago. That's actually quite up to date, so I can post that in the chat as well. So you can go straight away into that as well. The slides I'll also try to circulate immediately as well. But yeah. So anyway, Chris, you'll get them really fast. Any other questions? And Chris, if you get that fast, does that mean you'll go live today? You don't have to answer that. But any other questions? The profile, okay, Profile Manager. As soon as you go live, so if you go live now in Profile Manager, instantly, when you log back into Profile Manager, you'll see it. If there is a slight lag, when it's instant, it should be instant. If there's a slight lag, bear with it, but it should be pretty much instant. Okay, I'm going to take silence as that you're all dashing to go live, or you're either dashing to go to your next task. I'm going to thank you for your time today. I genuinely know that time is precious, and I really hope you have a good afternoon. And yeah, take care. Bye.